is Julia Petrie from Search Discovery, and I'll be moderating today's session behind the scenes. So if any of you are new to the SDC, we're a free educational community that offers sessions just like this in the areas of digital marketing, analytics, and more. So today's session will be in the area of digital strategy with Dan McGaw about how customer data platforms are the marketer's data lifeline, or should we say pipeline. So during this call, if you have any questions for our host, Dan, today, please place those questions in the Q&A section, and we'll make sure to get those questions answered at the end of today's session. I'll be putting in the chat here a few items where you can click to join our Slack channel or join as a member. So if you have any questions for me about the SDC, feel free to place those in the chat. I'll be looking for those there. So I am excited to introduce Dan today. We are so glad you can come and share some of your expertise. So I'll hand the mic over to you, Dan.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me too. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to supporting everybody. Please feel free to use that question and answers feature because I will totally do my best to answer those questions as we get along. Just before we start out, whoops, I just noticed I was on the wrong slide. Give me 1 second. I just want to fix that. Sorry about that, y'all. So what I'd love to do is today we're going to be talking about how you can build basically your customer data platform to build your data lifeline. Because at the end of the day, the way that we all manage data is going to be a lot different. Now, why am I the person to talk about this? So I'll give you just a little bit of background on myself. Well, yes, I'm Dan McGaw. I'm the CEO founder of a company called McGaw.io. We're a tech stack consulting firm. But I've actually also held roles at companies like Kissmetrics, where I was the head of the head of marketing at an analytics company. So I've been involved with MarTech for a long time. I started my career back in 1998, sending mass emails before there was even mass emails. So I'm older than MailChimp. That's the easiest way to think about it. But now, for the past 7 years, I've been one of the tech stack consultants helping all of your favorite brands basically build their tech stack. So I have a very, very unique view of the world when it comes down to how you're going to build your stack. Now, with that being said, I'd love to also give you all a free opportunity to get a copy of my book, Build Cool Shit. Great book, really, really easy. All you're going to have to do is text the word MarTech to the phone number 415-915-9011. I'll have a chance for you to do this again at the end of the presentation, so don't feel like you have to get all that number down really, really quickly. We'll put it in the Q&A for you as well, but we will actually send you a printed copy of my book directly to your home if you're in the US, so I highly recommend taking advantage of that opportunity. It is going to be a book all about how you can build your tech stack in marketing to really be able to push your business forward. But let's get back on track, okay? We were going to talk all about these customer data platforms and how they're your new lifeline for data. The first thing I'll say is that things have changed, right? No longer are we going through a 150-page Sears catalog trying to figure out which watch we're going to buy. Everything is much different, right? Back then, we couldn't track anything. Now, business has changed. We can track every single interaction a customer has with our brand. We know exactly what's going on at any single moment. And to take that a step further, right, we know every single thing that a customer is going to do. You'll notice on the left hand of my screen, you can see that we have, of course, the website, but on the right-hand side of the screen, as every single action is happening, every single one of those actions is being tracked. So as I switch pages, as I view these shirts, as I change the color of these shirts, you'll notice that every single one of those actions is being tracked. And we report on every single thing that you can imagine. If you have products like Amplitude out there, you can actually use all of that tracking to build a ton of custom reporting to really understand how your customers are using your site, using your products, and basically however they do anything. And with today's stacks, not only are we tracking these actions online, we can also track these actions offline and mix them all together so that way we can actually understand what's going on inside of our business. So the one thing that every marketer forgets about, though, is we always are worried about the actions our customers are taking. But what about the actions that we are actually taking as well? There's a lot of things that we do to our customers that cause them to act. And these are really important things that we need to track as well. As an example, let's say that you have a pop-up service on your website. Well, when somebody gets hit with that pop-up, you need to make sure that you're tracking that because this will have an impact on how your conversion works on your website and as well as how many leads you have. I don't know about you, but those annoying little chatbots that appear up on the bottom right-hand side, most companies don't even think to track that chatbot as even working working or if that actually people are clicking on it with their general analytics. And this is a big blind spot because you did an action, your customer is also going to do an action. And most companies don't even track this, let alone knowing with all of your data sets that you've sent an email. Most people only know the fact that an email was sent because it's in MailChimp or maybe it's in another platform. They have no idea an email has actually been sent, it's been opened, it's been clicked with the rest of their analytics. And that's the reason why we have to start thinking about how we're going to change this. Now, another one that is very common that people don't track at all is, hey, you gave somebody a phone call, right? Your sales rep made a phone call to a person. Well, you probably want to know how that phone call actually changes the buyer journey. And with the modern marketing stack, you can actually do this. But with the legacy stack, not using a CDP or a customer data platform, it makes it a lot harder. But what about if you're doing outbound prospecting, right? You have sales doing stuff as well. This again is another action we are doing to our customers. However, most companies don't even track this in the bigger scheme of the customer journey. And you really need to be able to take all those interactions into play. Now, this is mainly because tools are siloed, right? Marketing and sales, you're lucky if you can get them to eat lunch together in many companies. In my company, we force them to eat lunch together because, tools shouldn't be siloed. And I think these barriers are being broken down every single day, but I don't think this is happening nearly as fast as it needs to. But that's one of the reasons why CDPs are so amazing. Now, on top of that, the process of integrating these tools is crazy. There's just too many tools. I mean, there's over 9,000 different tech tools that we have to integrate together to be able to track the actions our customers do to us, but as well as for us to be able to track the actions we do to our customer. And that's making this even more complicated. Now, if you wanted to get that data, right? Let's say that you were a sophisticated marketer and you were going to pull the data out of Salesforce and Outreach and MailChimp and whatever pop-up tool you're using. Typically what you would do is you would do what's known as a manual ETL process. ETL just stands for export, transform, and load. And you'll notice in this process, you're pulling out CSV files, you're pulling out COBOL, you maybe got some Google Docs, who knows? You then have to get those into some sort of place where you can transform it and make it so all the data works together. And then naturally, you're then going to load that into another tool. And this is how I did marketing forever, for many, many, many years. And it was a painstaking process. I mean, I remember when I was the VP of growth at Code School, having to export data from MailChimp and import it into Kissmetrics, and then export data out of Kissmetrics, and then import that into SendGrid. And it was just a nightmare. And luckily, this process is dying. And what's required in marketing today is real-time updates. You don't have time to pull the data out and then transform it slowly and then load it in, which could take weeks, if not months of time to do. In marketing, we need to have real-time updates. And that's why it is just so important that marketers start thinking about, is their data pipeline? And marketers usually don't even know what a data pipeline is, but you really need to make sure that you focus on it. Now, what is a pipeline, right? At the end of the day, in the most layman's term possible, it is simply a pipe that you send your data into, and then it's going to send it somewhere important. And you might have multiple data pipelines. You might have one main pipeline, but understanding what your data pipeline is going to be something that is extremely, extremely important for your business. Now, again, if you had a traditional data pipeline, again, we're usually working with CSVs, XMLs, email files, things like that. You got to take that data down, make sure it's correct. Then you've got to filter it. Then you've got to massage it. Then you've got to look it up. Then you're going to transform it. And then you've got to load it back into whatever it was. Now, that process was lame. I'm not going to lie. I had to do it for many, many years. Super, super lame. But in today's marketing, we have Web 2.0 pipelines. So we have all of these different data sources, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Google Analytics, even Excel or Salesforce. We also now have a ton of tools which specialize in that exporting of that data and transforming it, which makes it a lot easier. Whether you're using products like Stitch or Fivetran to pull it down, and then you're transforming it and then loading that into your business intelligence, this process is becoming easier and easier. And for my data nerds that are out there, right? Like I love using a Fivetran or a Stitch or even a funnel.io to be able to pull it down, then dump it into my warehouse and use dbt to transform it, and then make it power all kinds of other analytics and tools. But that is not a reality for most marketers. And that's where a customer data platform can really come in. With Web 2.0, your data pipeline does not take into consideration all of your tools, right? So you need to make sure that you connect everything together to one consistent to one consistent taxonomy. Now, there's a lot of products out there that basically are in this space. If you have a CDI or a CDP, basically what it does is it becomes the center of your data pipeline. And this is really, really important because it enables you to move data around. There's a lot of vendors in this space. I'm not even going to try to cover all of them because there's over 100 vendors in this space now. But the big behemoths in the room are definitely companies like Segment, Lytics, and Particle. But there's a lot of companies out there. I actually just found out that Hall.io is being sunsetted last week. So that product's not even going to be around. They got acquired by somebody else. But like, why does this CDP matter? Well, at the end of the day, you have a ton of data sources where your customers are acting. There's back-end systems. You have people on gaming platforms. You have them on OTT. You have people doing actions on the web or even on a mobile device and even over voice, right? Alexa tracks you all the time. You have all these different data sources. And what a CDP can do is actually consume all of that data and then choose to send that data and those actions to other tools. So, somebody turns on the TV, they load up Netflix. Now that gets consumed by the CDP, and then that gets shared with all of your different analytics tools. And one of the great things about a CDP is you only have to integrate in it with the CDP once, and then it does the rest of the integrations for you when it comes down to your downstream tools. It makes it a lot easier to integrate or switch tools in the stack. But it also enables you to also pull in data from all of your different channels. So maybe you're doing social media work. Maybe you have things going on in advertising. Maybe you have email or push notifications or any of your personalization. What the CDP enables you to do is pull the data in from all of the different platforms and then enables you to basically build this one customer profile that has a 360-degree view of that user everywhere. Now, this is unprecedented type of ability. And the fact that you can make data move around like this and share it with different tools means that you can have all kinds of outcomes. And I'm going to show you some real examples of what you can do a little in just a couple seconds. Now, when we talk about the pipeline, I want you to understand I am literally meaning a pipeline, right? So a pipe in a line, pretty self-explanatory. So when you think about a data pipeline, you'll notice that there is a straight pipe going all the way through this. This means that we have Google Tag Manager at the top. It's sending data in the segment, sending segment data to Clearbit. Clearbit does have a bidirectional sync, so you will notice we are recycling the data through the system. But again, anything that goes in a segment goes all the way downstream. So Autopilot, Salesforce, Amplitude, and then finally, our Redshift data warehouse is also able to get that information. And that's where we actually need most of our data to go, because if you want to run big numbers, you can't do that in Google Analytics as easy as you'd like. You don't want to do that in Amplitude either. You want to do that in a data warehouse with maybe a product like Tableau or Looker or something like that, because you can do advanced math. Now, that's what I talk about when we talk about these data pipelines. Now, you will notice we have a recycling going on constantly. So Autopilot is constantly updating segment. Salesforce is constantly updating Autopilot. Autopilot is the marketing automation tool in this thing. And then you will notice we have random tools like Zapier, which are kind of on its own island, but it is sending its data in. It's just not receiving data from everything else. And that fills out our data pipeline. So let's try to put this a little bit into practicality's sake for you, right? Let's put actual real examples. Now, with a real example, one, we had to connect our customers' email actions and information via our new data-driven pipeline. So we had to be able to understand what emails are working, how we could send people targeted emails and get that going. This is a company called Carolina Designs, and they're an amazing company in the Outer Banks where you should go rent a home, right? So they have these massive houses that are 22 master bedrooms that you can rent for $45,000 a week, all the way down to homes that are basically 4 bedrooms, and you can rent them at the Outer Banks as well. They're a vacation rental company. This house you see back here is actually a 12 master bedroom home, which rents for about $15,000 a week. So as you might imagine, if you have a high-end product that you're selling, you really have to get granular with your data. Now, if you went to their site, the Outer Banks vacation rental site, and you went through it, you'll notice that you can choose different regions. So Corolla is a certain place in the Outer Banks where they have certain things going on. And we can go check out the homes in that area, click on them, and actually like them. And you'll notice with this Moonglow house, I'm checking it out, going through the page, and I'm like, hey, man, this looks like a pretty good house. I actually want to save this house and look at it later. And we'll get this pop-up that comes up, and as well as this thing on the bottom of the window, which shows us that I've saved that house. Now, because I'm not a known user, I'm going to enter in my email, Dan@effandamazing, and it's going to save that. Now, as I go through the site, it is tracking every single interaction that I have. So I know that this user viewed Corolla. I know that they viewed only one property. I know now that they have viewed 2 properties. And again, as they're going through this experience, I'm constantly trying to track everything that they do. So again, this user hits the save and compare feature. The email is already cached into that little pop-up, makes it easy. They can click save really quickly. And you'll notice on the bottom of the window, it has added those saved houses to the bottom of their browser. Now, the greatest thing is that I leave the website, I go over to Facebook and I do something fun and I have a good time. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go back because I'm now caring about my summer vacation. You'll notice on the bottom of that window are still those homes because we want you to pick up exactly where you left off. And if I was to click on one of them, it's going to take me right back to what that house was, because we want to optimize the consumer's experience to make it so that they can find these homes easily, to make sure that they can book what they want. Now, this is a pretty easy, straightforward way to do this on the client side. You can, of course, store this information in a cookie. You can, of course, make the website do whatever you want. But the important part is that we also tracked all of this information to make it so we could send them personalized emails. Now, why is this different than the way that you might be thinking that we would do this? Now, the way that most people would do this is they'd have to get their development team, they'd have to build transactional emails, they'd have to do a big integration that would take 6 to 12 weeks. They'd have to get all the developers involved and build all this crazy stuff. Not us. And that's the big difference about using a product like a CDP, is if you know how to build the taxonomy, you know how to connect the CDP to the site, you can make all kinds of personalization happen. And we actually hacked this to get this done in about a 2-week period. Now, if you'll notice here, I'm in Google Tag Manager. And all we did was that as people are going through the home and looking at these things, we are tracking that. And then that data is actually getting saved from Google Tag Manager, sent over to our customer data platform, and we're tracking every single thing that's going on. Now, we're actually scraping the name of the house off the page. We're scraping the URL of the image off of the page. We're scraping how many bedrooms are in that on that home off the page. And we're sending all that data into analytics to make sure that we know what houses are being viewed and all that stuff. So we track all that for analytics purposes. However, what we also do, which is super, super powerful, is all of that scraped data is not only sent to analytics, it's also sent to our marketing automation tool. Because Segment has a client-side JavaScript, we can send all of this eventing information over to Segment, so it powers our analytics, and it loads all of the different data attributes that we need to make sure that we know what house they're looking at. Now, as I'm going through Segment here, we can actually see the different taxonomy things that we've created, the different values that are tracking this house. All of this different information is actually not only being sent to analytics, but also being sent into our marketing automation tool. If I call identify while using a CDP, it will update all of my marketing automation tools. This client used ActiveCampaign, which is a fantastic product when you're trying to keep things simple and cheap. And as these things happen on the website, we actually updated different fields on that customer's record. So, hey, they viewed this house. We updated that they had viewed that house inside of ActiveCampaign. And you'll notice in this journey, what we basically do is we say, hey, look for these attributes. If these attributes appear, let's send an email to those users. Now, you'll notice in this email, they're all merge variables. The image that was at the top, the headline, the house preview, even the home description, all of that are merge variables in the automation tool. So when we go to actually create this email, you will notice that we take those properties that we had loaded in analytics and sent through Segment, and then also now in ActiveCampaign, all of those are going to be merge variabled into this email and make it so this email can be built dynamically from our marketing automation tool. We don't have to use a transactional email system like SendGrid or Mandrill. We're actually able to build all this in our marketing automation tool. And with that, you'll notice in the next iteration, we now have those houses appearing in that email. You can see the house name, you can see the description of the house, you can also see the house itself, and then also that will link you directly back to that house. But not only are we able to track all that information as it's being used on the website, you'll remember in that experience, I went and looked at Corolla, which is a certain place in the Outer Banks, which is different than Duck or any of the other places. And what we want to do is we want to show off the wild horses that are in in Corolla. Corolla has these wild horses which still live out there. So now what we're doing is we're segmenting our email list based upon the pages that the customers have actually viewed. And we're able to give them a ton of information and say, hey, why don't you check out all these other houses? Look at the things that you're able to do in Corolla. And then also a few days later, they still haven't booked yet. Hey, we make them aware of the 5 best things to do when they're at the Outer Banks. And you'll notice this email is tailored to Corolla. You'll see the horses, you'll see the lighthouse, you'll see we get them to go fishing. All of that has been perfectly segmented based upon the tracking that we have added to that site. And at the bottom of this email, you'll also notice the last house that they saved was added to that email. This is all done in marketing automation. We didn't have to get developers involved and get anything crazy. If somebody knows Tag Manager, you can get all this data, and that would take you exactly back to the house. Now, this type of tracking actually was able to increase their conversions on their website dramatically, was able to get people back into the funnel. And we're able to do it a lot quicker and easier because we had a product like a CDP in the middle. Now, this is also, while this data is being sent to the marketing automation tool, I made you aware that this is also in analytics. So if I went into my analytics product, I looked at saved listings, I could now group my saved listings by any single house that is out there. And if I wanted to see which houses are performing best, all I have to do is run a quick report and I can actually see all that. Now, all I did was I sent data in Google Tag Manager to Segment, and then Segment distributed that data for me to all of my downstream tools so I didn't have to do it. So what would that data pipeline look like, right? Well, we have Google Tag Manager, we have Segment, we have ActiveCampaign, we have Amplitude. And all of those things are connected and integrated by us just sending data to Segment, and then Segment distributed the data everywhere else. So a really, really good way to do personalization without having to get your dev team involved. Now let's talk about another way you might want to do this. Another example. Let's say that we wanted to track Salesforce sales stages back to the web funnel so we can optimize our channels. Now this next company is a company called RealThread. They're a t-shirt printer, but they do like big orders, like 50,000 t-shirts for Amazon and things like that. Now they had a really, really good stack. They had a CDP installed. Unfortunately, they were using Intercom and Kissmetrics, and Salesforce was on its own island. And they were doing a lot of outbound prospecting and basically spamming people to get them to come back to the website. Now, just imagine if you have all these people coming back to your website because you're sending outbound email, they then get into the funnel, they start building their order. However, the outbound email is not connected to the fact that they came back to the website, and nobody has an idea that these are the same users. Now, as you might understand, this is a pretty big problem. We have a disjointed customer experience because they're being sent to the site. They are actually building an order and submitting an order, but we actually don't know that that really came from what sales email or what's going on. And not only are they going to the website and trying to submit these orders, many times people are coming to the website and not even using the builder. They're just contacting us and calling us, which means that we have a hole in our customer journey that we don't understand. It gets even worse if they email us or if they use the instant chat. So it's really, really important to be able to tie all that stuff together. Now, going back to their stack, right, it's because Segment is not connected to Salesforce where this actually happens. SalesLoft also was not even connected to Salesforce when we started working with them. To make it so they had a new pipeline and can actually track all of this data, what we did was we augmented their stack. We gave them a bunch of different tools. They have call tracking now, they have good analytics, and we connected everything together. But the primary points of this one I'm going to focus on are going to be Segment, Autopilot, Salesforce, and Amplitude. Now, as somebody goes to the website, just like we showed earlier, every single action they do is actually being tracked. So really, really important stuff there where everything on the website is being tracked. So it doesn't matter. They can enter in that they have 50 t-shirts. I know that they have 50 t-shirts because that's actually being tracked on the right-hand side here. I could also see as they view any of the shirts, we can see that all of those things are also popping up. Every single action that they do on the website is being tracked. And this is extremely, extremely helpful because now we can actually understand what's going on. Now, we need to be able to connect those online actions basically to their offline actions. So as somebody is going through this site, they're going to enter in their information, they're going to start to build out their orders, and they're going to get all that stuff going. And if we have our stack built correctly, we can actually tie all this together back in with Salesforce. So as an example, this person's uploading all of their stuff into the orders. They've uploaded their artwork. We can track that inside of Salesforce as well, so that way we really understand what's going on. Now, what we can do is inside of Amplitude, we have all those actions tracked, right? So that's pretty straightforward. Every single thing that user did on the website was going into Segment, and Segment was sending it downstream all the way over to Amplitude. So anything that they do can be tracked, right? And we can build a funnel report, we can build segmentation reports, we can do whatever we need. Really, really good and easy stuff there. Now, what we can also do is we can add what's known as a lead status change. You'll notice that I actually am tracking that somebody's lead status has changed, and we're looking for somebody who has the status equal working. Now, in this funnel report, what I can track is all the activities that are happening on the website, and then as well as if that lead actually got picked up by a sales rep, I can actually see that entire funnel because I've connected Salesforce with my customer data platform to make it so that that information is now going into my web analytics. And if anybody's on this call is actually able to track their Salesforce actions back to their web analytics product, we should go nerd out and have a beer somewhere or coffee. But let me show you how we did this. Now, we're a big fan of Autopilot. Autopilot has the ability to understand when something happens in Salesforce. Salesforce and Autopilot have a bi-directional sync. So all we do is we listen for that action to happen. We find out if they're on a certain list, and then we add a small delay. And then if that is true, we send an event to Segment. So if somebody goes to a working status, all we do is we send an event into Segment. It now tells Segment this user is actually in the working status. If they're in outbound, they go in outbound. So as an example, when we start outbounding people, they all get that event. Outbound email basically gets started on them. And with that data pipeline, since Autopilot has a bidirectional sync with Segment, Segment is sending that data downstream, and it is then going to wind up in Amplitude, going back to that funnel where I could see all the web activities and then also understand if a sales rep had actually picked them up in Salesforce, which is usually the black hole. It's a blind spot in most companies. So being able to have that CDP enables me to connect all these things together. And for my last example, what I want to do is show you how we connect customer actions from emails in this new data-driven pipeline. Now, I'll give you an example. We're going to use the same company, RealThread. Basically, what happens is you go to the RealThread site and you go there because they're really good at SEO and you want to download their new lookbook. You're an unknown user and you fill out the email, you put it in, Dan at Amazing Corps, and then all of a sudden you get your wonderful lookbook. At the same time, though, you get a welcome email from RealThread saying, hey, we don't want to spam you. Just let us know what type of role you're in, and we will actually send you good content. You click on that, and you wind up going back to the website, and you just get a little pop-up that says, thanks for responding. Now, with that information, now that we know your role, if you're a graphic designer, we can send you the right content. If you're a designer for an apparel company, we can also send you the right content. And then if you're a business owner, we can send you how to print t-shirts on a budget. Because at the end of the day, if you send somebody the wrong content that they don't care about, they're going to unsubscribe. And once they're unsubscribed, you're kind of screwed. So you want to make sure that you send them good content that they care about. Now, how did we make all of that happen, though, just off of somebody clicking an email? Now, what we did is that we, of course, had that welcome email built. So if somebody gets added to our email list, we then send them this wonderful welcome email. And it says, hey, we don't want to spam you. Just tell us a little bit about you, and we'll send you good content. What you'll notice, though, is each one of these buttons have UTM codes on them that tell us what type of person they are. So you'll notice for the UTM term, we actually save that as an apparel company owner. So every one of these buttons in the term for UTM content, that's actually being saved when they go back to the website, but we're making it in all of these buttons so they're different, right? So every one of these has that on it to make sure when you click it and you go back to the website, it gets stored because it's UTM, right? All websites store that stuff. However, with our marketing automation tool, we have also built a listener for that stuff. So if somebody was to come to the website and visit a page and they have those UTMs with you're an apparel company owner, it will actually update a field on the user's profile in Autopilot. It will then send an event into Segment saying this person is a apparel company owner and whatever their answers are to that question, which is going to be super, super helpful because not only do we save this information in our marketing automation tool and can use it for segmentation, but we also just sent this in the analytics and now we can run reporting. Now, going back to the process, right? We have Autopilot. It has the recycling of data into Segment. Segment sends it down the pipeline, so it gets in front of Salesforce, so it's in front of the salespeople. But earlier I showed you an example with Amplitude. Let's say that we had KISS metrics as well. Well, because Segment has an integration with both of those products, it makes it really, really easy to now go jump into KISS metrics and say, hey, listen, I want to see all the roles of people who answered our free contest. So the users that filled in their email but came only through our free contest form that then gave us the answer to that role question in that email. I just want to see those users. I want to know what type of users are most likely, what roles are most likely to take advantage of the free contest. Now, this is something really interesting because when we did this analysis to understand what was going on, we actually were quite surprised by the results. Now, what you'll notice here is that we are tracking each one of those roles. The questions that people answered, right, through that email, it all got saved. However, what was most interesting to us is that when people are entering the free t-shirt contest, HR people could care less. Why? Why would HR people care about free t-shirts? They don't get the free t-shirts. They're printing company shirts. They don't get anything out of it. Well, it's obvious that an apparel company owner would love this because they actually sell the shirts. So if they get them for free, they make a good profit. So you'll be able to see how we're able to connect all of those insights and attributes all the way downstream because we have the customer data pipeline, or excuse me, the customer data platform as our data pipeline. And this enables you to make data get shared throughout your entire stack. You can recycle data like you've never done before and really make it so that you can create good user experiences that have good outcomes for your business. Now, I want to give you just a little bit of advice, right? So your data-driven marketing is only as good as the people that you hire to build it. So don't be stupid and build cool shit. Now, like I said earlier, I would love to give everybody a free copy of my book. This is literally a printed book that we will ship directly to you. High gloss, high cover, everything like that. All you have to do is text the word MarTech to that number, 415-915-9011. And if you're in the United States, we'll ship it to you. If you're out of the United States, we will give you a PDF copy. So thanks so much, everybody. I appreciate you letting me go through this presentation. Hope this was helpful, and I'm looking forward to jumping into the Q&A with everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dan, for sharing. That's just so amazing how we can create those custom interactions based on what we're tracking. So really cool stuff there. We did see 2 questions come through. Do you see them on your end as well, Dan?
Yes, I was going to say I can start with the one from Lauren, if that's cool.
Perfect.
So Lauren asked the question, did you notice any major speed or loading issues scraping that amount of data via the HTML using GTM? Yes, there is a balance of when you want to do that, because we were doing that as hacky as possible by basically just scraping the site. What I would advise is, one, you should probably use your data layer and have your data layer set up just as much possible to get that basically set up and allow your data layer to do as much of that work as you can. If you really want to offload all of that work as well, you could do a server-side integration, which is what, like, that would be your fastest path to success. But yes, I would also say that GTM itself is going to slow the page speed down, but as well as if you are scraping things from the DOM like we were in that example, it is going to slow things down. The data layer will speed that up again and also make it more accurate. But when you have to be able to create results today as a marketing team, sometimes you're willing to risk a little bit of page speed to deliver on those results. So hope that is really, really helpful there. We got, and please feel free to throw as many questions as you'd like in here. I would always be happy to answer anything crazy, but we'll do our best to make sure we have it. We got another question in the real thread example. Are you sending data from Salesforce to Segment, or is Salesforce data getting to Segment via autopilot? And that was a really good question. So the data from Salesforce was not being sent to Segment. The data from Salesforce is synced with autopilot. And autopilot is able to send those events, and excuse the train in the background, autopilot is able to send that as an event into Segment. Now, if you don't have a product like autopilot, there are other ways that you can do this. Typically, we're using Zapier to do that. So something happens in Salesforce, Zapier sees that happens. We then write a custom function in Zapier to send that event to Segment, and then it goes downstream. There's a myriad of different ways that you can do that. You can even, if you're really, really good at Apex code, you could have Salesforce do it itself, but that's expensive, and I'm a frugal marketer, so I tend to try to do the cheapest path that I can there. So, but that will definitely be there. And then the same folk had asked, is there an alternative way to send data to Segment if you don't use GTM due to data security concerns? Absolutely. So, you know, it depends on how your company is structured. So we have multiple clients which are in the healthcare space or financial services. So Google Tag Manager is just not even welcome. In that case, we typically we have Segment installed on the website, and we're doing a direct native integration where we're writing Segment syntax on the website. Sometimes even that's not possible. So what we will actually do is work with the client to have a first-party cookie, which does all their tracking. It sends that to the server, and then we have the server manage all the interactions with Segment. So if you are one of those companies that's super, super secure, you're just going to switch everything to a server-side integration. And if you are secure and you want to keep a tag manager, you know, you could drop GTM and switch to an Insightin or a Telium, which are way more secure, way more expensive, I will admit. And I'm a frugal marketer, going back to my point. But that would also be another way you would do that. And these are great questions. Y'all are having some good ones here. The next question was, can you elaborate on what custom functions are in Segment? So earlier when I had mentioned custom functions, I was talking about doing those in Zapier, because Zapier, you can basically send a API call to any service. However, in Segment, you now have the same ability as well. So with a custom function, as you are receiving that data, you can create a custom function in Salesforce, in Segment, to actually send an API call, webhook, to basically any other service that you want. So a big problem that we used to have, I mean, I've been using Segment since they were still in their accelerator, so I'm very, very familiar with Segment's product, but it used to be a bummer because we were only limited to what was in their garden wall. But with custom functions, I can now send data to anything that I want. I can send it to my on-premise server if it has an FTP. I can send data to a product which nobody heard about, like Agile CRM, right? So custom functions enable you to send data from Segment which is basically consuming data from almost all of your tools anywhere you want. So really, really cool. I like the custom functions. I don't get to use them enough though. We need some more nerdy clients that like to use functions. And another one was brought up by Evan, which is I mentioned the server-side tagging for Google Tag Manager. Can I elaborate on when this will be a better alternative? So with Google Tag Manager server-side, I will be first to say that I am not the most experienced person on my team with GTM server-side. I would be a little ignorant on that one myself. I do know my team is definitely using it. But the server-side integration from GTM is basically trying to do a very similar thing that Segment is doing. It's the routing of your data from a server-side perspective. And GTM is able to grab that from the client side, send it to the server, and then send it on to whatever it needs to do. When you do implementations, client-side implementations tend to not have as great of tracking because of ad blockers and whatever else. Safari is crazy with ITP. But if you use server-side integration and everything's being run from a first-party cookie, and then you send it to a server-side integration like a GTM, that can then relay the data on through its own integrations compared to the other way that's doing. And the last question that I have right now is Eric had asked, what are the ballpark percentage of sites are not scrapable, and how do you deal with those? Ooh, that's a good one. Well, basically anything, most sites in any capacity can be scraped in some capacity because everything basically goes to the DOM. I would say single page applications will be the worst ones to do that on and be the hardest, but most sites you have an ability to scrape. That being said, with sites that are not scrapable, right? So like we're not trying to scrape things, that's where you want to change the data layer, because you're at that point when you change the data layer, you're no longer scraping. The data layer is there to give you information. So that way you can reuse it. So in that case, you would want to switch to the data layer and then let the data layer tell you the attributes and then push those things on compared to trying to scrape from the DOM. So I hope that answers that question, Eric, but I always tell people, be as hacky as you can to get the business result you're looking for. Jeffrey asked the question, how usable are these tools in user personalization scenarios outside of marketing? Jeffrey comes from a nonprofit higher education world. The monitoring tools could improve learning experience and administrative services, but no traditional marketing goals there. I'm not completely sure what you mean exactly by the question, but the thing that I will say is that when you have a customer data platform, whether it be Segment, MetaRouter, whatever it may be, it does enable you to move data around a lot more quickly and then be able to create personalization. So if you're able to track something on the website or in Salesforce and then send that into Segment and then that sends it into Marketo, well, you now have a field to do personalization on. And I'm really, really big about personalization. If you were to go to the McGaw.io website, so mcg.io, you can see it on the bottom corner of the slide there. If you go to the footer section, there's a thing for downloads and resources. There is a webinar in there talking about personalization and taxonomy. There's also another one about webinar about personalization and CDPs. If you watch those two webinars, they'll give you a better answer to the question you're asking, just because I can't answer it completely on the fly. An anonymous user shockingly asked about GDPR. An anonymous user asked about GDPR. Shocking. Sorry, GDPR, they're all anonymous. How do we ensure we're compliant with sharing PII via the data pipeline? That is a great question. One, I'm in America, so I don't totally abide by GDPR. I abide more by CCPA, but I get your point. One, what you need to do is make sure that your CDP is set up to have your data governance policies inside of it. So if you don't want PII to be moved around, inside of Segment, they have a product called Protocols, as well as inside of Personas, you can do this as well. That will prevent data going to certain tools. So you do have the ability in a product like Segment to use Protocols to do that. I know every CDP has a taxonomy feature like that, which will enable you to do that. And then most CDPs do have a GDPR kind of conscious integration where you can choose to ignore certain cookies based upon the user's site. If you went, we actually just launched a blog post at McGaw.io about consent management and how that works. If you went to the McGaw.io blog, check that out. You can check out the consent management thing because consent is the most important part with GDPR. And if you have consent done right, the rest of the tools will just obey, which is really, really helpful to get set up. But I do want to say again, it is comical that an anonymous user is asking about GDPR because GDPR is all anonymity. I can't say that word. And then the last question, are data layers necessary for native Segment implementations or just needed for tag managers? It's a good question. I would say the data layer should be used in both situations because the data layer is the data layer. So I would say in both situations, you would want a data layer because if you are writing native code, you are going to leverage what's in the data layer and send that downstream. So in both cases, you should have it. If you're a cheap, hacky marketer like I am forced to be from time to time, every once in a while, you got to scrape the DOM and do what you got to do. But if you can get the data layer, which is more expensive, go the data layer route because your data is going to be way more accurate. So now we got any major impact with upcoming GA4. No, GA4 is great, but you got to remember that GA4 is trying to be Amplitude or Mixpanel or Kissmetrics, and they're really late to the party, really, really late. And most of that data is not as valuable if you don't know who the customer is. And in Google Analytics terms of service, you're not allowed to know who the customer is. You cannot make an anonymous user known. Don't get me wrong, there's ways to do it, and people break the rules all the time. But GA4 is going to give you behavioral analytics, unlike Google Analytics will do. It will give you a better view of the world. But in my personal opinion, you're better off going to an Amplitude where you can actually know Joe at AOL.com is Joe at AOL.com. And Amplitude's great. It's a free product up to 10,000 or 10 million events. So, I'm not as excited about GA4 as maybe everybody else, just because I know of all the other tools that exist out there that do the same thing, just better. So, but that's my view of the world. And I will say it again, don't be afraid to get the book. It will definitely help you understand some of these concepts, because in this 30-minute webinar, I'll never be able to get as deep as you with your highlighter in that book. So definitely recommend it.
Well, awesome, Dan. Thank you so much for going through those questions for everybody. I just want to say thank you again for presenting today. We appreciate you coming to share your expertise at an SDEC session. And thank you, everybody, for joining today. Just stay tuned for the next SDE sessions to come. So
awesome. Thanks so much for having me. It's a ton of fun, everybody.
Thanks.